You walk in slower now, not because of age, but because the room remembers. The chair, the shoes by the door, the soft hum of a clock. You catch yourself glancing at the hallway, half hoping, half dreading. Grief doesn't scream anymore. It just sits with you, like the shadows at dusk. You open the fridge, close it. You don't eat much at night, but you still set the table for two. Maybe it's routine. Maybe it's reverence. Maybe your soul is keeping vigil. They're gone. But the space they filled still breathes, and you're afraid that forgetting might feel like betrayal. So tonight, once again, the plate stays, unmoved, but not untouched. You hum without realizing. A tune you hadn't sung in years. It was their favorite. Something about amazing grace and chains falling. You picture them, hand on your shoulder voice, a little off-key. But they sang like they meant it. And now, so do you. The memory comes not with pain, but with stillness. That sacred hush that says, I was here. You wonder if they still sing it where they are now. If heaven echoes those same notes. Maybe, somewhere beyond this silence, they're still singing beside you. Your voice cracks halfway through. Not from sadness, but from remembering too well. You turn off the light, but the melody stays. Faint, holy, like a whisper from eternity. You dust around it, carefully. It's chipped at the rim, not enough to matter, but just enough to remember. They used to drink from it every morning. Coffee with too much sugar. Always humming, always smiling. You kept it there because it was theirs. Not for display, but for presence. You haven't touched it in months, except today. Today your hand lingered just a little longer. Not to move it, just to feel close. Some objects are relics of love. Others are bookmarks of a life. And this mug, this simple cracked mug, tells you you're not crazy for holding on. Love leaves fingerprints, and so does grief. You sigh, then walk away. But your heart doesn't follow. You know what it's like to wait for what won't return, to sit near absence and still hope for a sound. You remember Mary standing in a garden near a tomb before sunrise. She didn't run. She stayed. And you feel like that sometimes. Not just because of the loss, but because you never got to say what needed to be said. There are sentences still unfinished. Jokes you saved for later. Hands you meant to hold longer. And yet, you wait. Not for resurrection, but for a kind of peace. For something to make the waiting feel holy. You wipe your eyes. You whisper their name. And for a second you think you hear it back. You laugh at church. You answer when spoken to. You make casseroles, you nod. But they don't ask about the quiet. Not the kind outside, the one inside. The stillness that took root the day you lost them. There's a part of you that hasn't spoken since. Not out loud. Not to God. You pray, but the words feel borrowed. You smile, but your eyes don't follow. They say time heals. You say nothing, because silence has become your new language. And some days it's easier than trying to explain why their name still tastes like longing. You want to talk about them, but the world moved on. So now, you hold your stories like a secret psalm. The sink's dripping again. One cupboard doesn't close all the way. There's dust near the windowsill where their photo used to sit. You imagine him there, quiet, calm, no sandals needed. Just presence. Not fixing anything. Just showing up. Jesus in your kitchen. No sermon, no miracles, just eyes that see what others overlook. He'd probably notice the chipped tile, the way your hands tremble when you make tea, the empty spot where you stopped keeping napkins for two. And maybe he'd say nothing, just pour you a glass of water and stay. Because he knows what it's like to miss someone too. You blink and the room is still, but not alone. You don't need him to say their name. He already knows. Every shared laugh, every sleepless night, every silent prayer you whispered into your pillow. He knows the weight of your grief, not from watching, but from carrying it with you. You glance toward the chair, still empty, but somehow less lonely, because now he's in the room, not as preacher, not as savior fixing what broke, just as friend, sitting in the ache, breathing the same air. You let your shoulders drop, not all the way, but enough to feel what you hadn't let yourself feel all week. He doesn't ask you to move on, he just stays. You finally picked up the mug. Your hands wrap around it like they used to. Except no, he's holding it too. Fingers over yours. Warm. Gentle. He doesn't fill it. He doesn't pour. He just holds it with you. That's how he comforts, not by changing the past, but by being in the present. You close your eyes. Feel the weight of what's been lost, and the mercy of being met right here. There's no rebuke, no lesson, just shared quiet. He looks at you not to ask anything but to say everything. And for the first time, you don't resist the tears. You just let them fall. Into the cup, into his hand. You've kept it hidden. For their sake, for your own. The kind of grief that's too big for words, too soft for attention. But tonight, with him, you let go. You speak their name. Once, twice, then stop. The memories come like waves. Not drowning, just rolling. He listens, not with answers, but with understanding. You show him the drawer of letters, the sweater you still fold, the note you never sent. And he doesn't flinch. He just nods, like he's known all along. You're not ashamed. You're not afraid. You're just finally seen. And in being seen, you begin to breathe again. It's past midnight. The house is still. But you're not. You breathe deeper now, not because the pain is gone, but because he stayed. The plate's still on the table, the chair's still empty. But your heart, it's being held, not with solutions, not with miracles, just presence. You whisper, "Thank you." He doesn't respond, but you feel the response in your chest like a lullaby written just for grief. Tonight, you don't ask for healing. You don't ask for strength. You just say his name. Once, softly. And sleep comes like a gift. Because he stayed. And he still is. It still smells like them. Not strong. Just enough to remember. You folded it years ago and placed it in the third drawer. You've moved houses since then, but the drawer came with you. You open it some nights, not to touch, just to check it's still there. Others call it letting go. You call it holding on to something that once held you. You still dream they'll walk through the door in that old cardigan. Hands full of groceries, keys jingling. But then morning comes and the silence is back. Not cruel, just honest. You never cried at the funeral. You've been crying inside ever since, and tonight you feel the drawer before you open it. It was always the one about the lost sheep. You never understood why they loved that story so much. Until now. Until the grief made you feel like the one who wandered off unseen, unheard, left behind. They'd read it gently, sometimes twice. See, the shepherd doesn't stop looking, they'd whisper. You were just a child. But now you're the one wondering if someone will come find you. You whisper the verse to yourself tonight, even if it's cracked with age. You remember the rhythm of their voice more than the words, and that somehow is enough, because love like that doesn't just vanish, it lingers. And maybe, just maybe, he's still searching the hills for you. You told them you were fine. You weren't. You said, go rest. I'll call tomorrow. You didn't. You meant to say thank you. You never did. Now it circles your mind like a record too scratched to stop. Every night around this hour, when the house goes still and your thoughts get loud, you pace, sit, try to pray, but the words turn to ash in your mouth. You think God must be tired of this loop. But tonight, a strange peace comes in the middle of your guilt, not as relief, but as witness. Someone saw, someone stayed. And even if the words weren't said, the love was real. Maybe Jesus carries unsaid thank yous in his hands. You denied the need to grieve. You busied your hands, filled your days, said all the right things, they're in a better place, God has a plan. But deep down, you folded yourself small like Peter, ashamed. Not for betrayal, but for pretending you were okay. The grief crowed at dawn, loud, sudden, undeniable. And your faith stumbled. Not lost, just quiet. Jesus knew Peter's tears before they fell. And maybe he knows yours too. Maybe you don't need to pretend anymore. You whisper, I miss them. Just that. And in that small confession something cracks. Not to break you, to let him in. He's not asking for strength, just for honesty, like he did with Peter. You used to pray out loud. Now you just sit there, hands still, eyes open. Not because you don't believe, but because belief hurts tonight. You tried asking God why. Why now? Why them? Why this? But the heavens felt sealed. So you stopped asking, stopped expecting, but not hoping. Even silence, when offered in his direction, becomes prayer. And tonight you give him your silence, not as surrender, but as trust in disguise. You don't know what you need, only that you need him. And that is enough. Some nights, the most faithful thing you can do is stay in the room where he might still come. It's not a real place, just in your mind. But tonight, the image is strong. The garden, the morning, the stone, and someone rolling it away. You watch, heart thudding. Not because you expect them to return, but because you wonder if resurrection applies to grief, to breathless aching, to the part of your soul buried next to theirs. Then you see him, Jesus. He doesn't say a word, just lifts the stone, not to erase what happened, but to let something holy rise from it. You step closer, not into triumph, but into healing that doesn't rush. He turns to you, and suddenly the garden feels like home. You used to look away in prayer, afraid he'd see how much you still blame him, how your heart half closed the day they died. But tonight you lift your eyes. You picture his face, worn, gentle, the kind that weeps before it heals. He meets your gaze and doesn't flinch. There's no lecture, no disappointment, just knowing. He knows what you lost, who you lost, and who you became in the losing. You exhale, not because it's over, but because you finally stopped pretending. And still, he stays, looking right at you, not through you, like he's waited years for you to just look back. It's been years, but in your mind the soil is still fresh, the flowers still cling to their plastic stems. The wind still carries that cold, empty hush. You hated that day, hated what it meant, but tonight, he's there, Jesus, kneeling beside that same grave. Not to change history, not to lift the body, but to sit in the memory with you. His hand brushes the name etched in stone, then rests on yours. And somehow the scene softens, not because it hurts less, but because you're not the only one carrying it now. He whispers nothing, yet says everything. I know. And in that knowing, you grieve freely, finally. You don't need resurrection tonight. You need presence, and he gives it. No thunder, no miracle light, just stillness, just him. You're sitting on the steps outside your memory, and he joins you, not to move you forward, not to pull you out, but to stay exactly where you are. It's the first time you feel like this grief has a witness, someone who doesn't shrink back, someone who doesn't try to fix what your soul can't explain. You lean your shoulder against him, like a child, like a friend. He leans back, and suddenly the weight feels a little less cruel, because now it's shared. You didn't plan to, it just happened. Your chest rose, fell deeper than it has in ages, and something unlatched. Not in your mind, in your soul. You haven't cried, not tonight, but you breathed, and that's its own kind of release. The grave in your memory is still there, the sweater still folded, the voice still gone, but you are no longer alone in it. Jesus didn't offer answers, he offered himself. And sometimes that's the miracle. You sit in silence, but it's a different kind now. Not empty, just full of what's real. You close your eyes, whisper, "You found me," and you know. He never stopped searching. You heard it again last night. Not real, not loud. Just the faint echo of joy that once lived in this house, their laughter, bright, honest, full of mischief. You used to tell them to quiet down. Now you'd give anything to hear it again for real. You wonder if heaven echoes through dreams, if souls send back little notes of memory. You turn over in bed, the light's still on in the hallway. You leave it that way now. Maybe it's silly, maybe it's sacred. You close your eyes and smile, because even if the world says they're gone, your heart still knows the sound of their laughter, and tonight you let it sing you to sleep. They used to quote it often, especially on hard days. Even though I walk through the valley, they'd pause there like the rest was meant to be breathed, not spoken. You never thought much of it then, but now it lingers. Not as scripture, as shelter. You repeat it slowly, not to recite, to remember, The cadence of their faith becomes your own tonight. Each word a footstep, each phrase a hand on your shoulder. You're not walking alone, not anymore. Some verses don't save you. They just hold you upright when your knees want to give. You whisper it one more time, and something inside you exhales like God has wrapped the words around your chest. You didn't plan to, but tonight your hands moved before your mind did. You took the blanket off the chair, the one they always wrapped around their legs, still soft, still warm, still faintly theirs. You fold it not like a chore but like a prayer. Each crease an offering, each tuck a thank you. You place it gently at the foot of your bed, not to forget, to honor. There's a sacredness to small things, like this, like memory stitched in cotton. You sit for a while, looking at it, not needing words. Grief can be quiet and still be true. And tonight that blanket is more than cloth. It's a part of your altar. You didn't want attention, just healing, just hope. You've lived with this quiet ache so long it's become part of you. Like her reaching through the crowd trembling unseen, you too have reached out. Not boldly, barely, just enough to graze the edge of hope. And he felt it. That invisible thread between desperation and divinity. Jesus didn't turn away then. He won't now. You're not asking for a miracle. You're asking to be known. And tonight you feel it. The pause, the gaze, the warmth that says you matter. You pull the blanket around your shoulders, like a hem of his robe, and for once you believe he noticed. You lit the candle again, not for prayer, for memory, for whatever little comfort a flicker can bring. Sometimes faith feels like pretending. Other times it feels like breathing through the ache. You miss them terribly, and you wonder if that longing counts as a prayer, if missing them is its own form of worship. You tell yourself you're fine, but God already knows you're not. Still, you show up. You sit in the dark and say their name, softly. And somewhere in the stillness you hear another name whispered back. Yours. Spoken by someone who knows what it is to weep. You don't move, you just listen. And let the silence answer everything. You don't see him. But suddenly the room feels different. Like fresh air, like the quiet right before the first drop falls. You remember how they used to run to the porch when it rained, laughing, reaching. Now the scent wraps around you like memory, and you know, it's him. Jesus walks in with no fanfare, no halo, just presence. Like someone who knows this is sacred ground. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. The grief that once flooded now finds a shore. And for a moment it's enough to just breathe the same air as him. You let the window stay open. Let the rain come in. Because tonight it smells like healing. The ache hasn't left. But neither has he. You lie back slowly. The pillow catches your tears, and then warmth. Not from a blanket, from him. Jesus bends low, pulls the sheet up with the same care you once gave your child. Not to fix you, to comfort you, to say, I see how tired you are. He tucks you in with silence, with reverence, as if your pain is holy ground. And maybe it is. Because he came here, not to remove it, to stay in it. You close your eyes, not in despair, in surrender. Because when the Son of God pulls up the covers, even sorrow feels safe. He doesn't leave, doesn't rush, just sits hand near yours, heartbeat steady. You can't remember the last time someone stayed this long. Stayed through the heaviness, the silence, the in-between. He watches you breathe, and your body responds like it's finally allowed to rest. Not because the hurt is gone, but because you don't have to guard it anymore. No more proving strength, no more holding it all together. You whisper, "You really stayed." He nods, and you cry without shame. The kind of crying that heals, not breaks. And in that moment just before sleep, you realize the miracle was never escape. It was his company, his stillness, his closeness. Your soul exhales. Just before you drift off, you hear it. Your name. Not loud, not startling, familiar. Like how they used to say it, full of affection, of knowing. Except this time, it's his voice. Jesus. Calling you like a friend who's known every chapter. Like a shepherd who remembers the one. It carries through your chest, not your ears. And suddenly, you feel 10 years younger. Not in body, in soul. You open your eyes just enough to whisper back, "I'm here." And he smiles. Because that was always enough. Not your strength, just your presence. Tonight, you're not lost. You're called. And in that calling, you finally belong. You won't remember this moment, not fully, but your spirit will. The warmth that came without demand. The peace that required nothing but rest. You don't have to rehearse your grief anymore. Don't have to justify your tears. Tonight, you are simply held. Mercy doesn't knock. It wraps. And that's what you feel now, like a soft covering over all the places that still ache. Jesus doesn't speak, doesn't need to. You feel him where your loneliness used to live. And for the first time in years, you sleep. Not from exhaustion, from trust. He doesn't leave when your eyes close. He just stays. And his mercy stays with him until morning. Pray for when grief won't let you sleep. God, I don't know how to let go without forgetting. I miss them so much it feels like breathing through broken glass. But if you're still here, if you're still holding me through this, then I'll stop pretending I'm fine. Just stay with me tonight. Amen. You can rest now. You have carried so much, not just memories, but the weight of love that had no place to go. But he saw it. He sat beside you, and he didn't ask you to be strong. Let your shoulders drop. Let the silence soften. Even in your sadness, you were never alone. This grief, it was witnessed. This ache, it was held. Jesus did not rush it away. He simply stayed long enough for your heart to finally exhale. You don't need to understand what happens next. You only need to know that someone holy kept vigil beside your sorrow, and that tonight your soul has permission to sleep. Close your eyes, breathe slowly, and imagine this Jesus rocking you gently under the weight of his mercy until even your tears feel safe enough to rest. If this moment met you where you needed, if something deep within you loosened just enough to feel again, then know this space was made for you. Subscribe to keep his voice within reach when yours is tired. Share this with someone who's grieving quietly so they too can feel seen. And if you feel safe to do so, I would be honored to hear your story in the comments. Was there ever a moment, a whisper, a scent, a stillness where you felt the presence of someone you loved, and the nearness of Jesus at the same time? Good night.